Like adding a relationship between two ends of a many-to-many, when changing or removing these relationships, the focus is on changing or removing the join between the two ends, but the two ends stay intact. Because we're using skip navigations, that join isn't directly available to us as an object. And that means you'll need both ends of that relationship in memory so that you can remove one of the objects from the other's list and let the change tracker figure out how to respond to that in the database. And again, because each end is equal in the relationship, neither one is principal or dependent, it doesn't matter which end you focus on. You may recall that we assigned two artists, Dee and Pablo, to work on one of the covers. Well, Pablo has decided that Dee is such a great talent that she won't need his help, so he's going to bow out of working on that cover. I'll take advantage of the fact that I know the cover ID is 1, and I can write a query against the cover's DB set, include the artists, but I'll filter the include to only bring back the artist that I want to remove, Pablo, whose artist ID also happens to be 1. I could have included all of the artists, which in my database won't affect performance at all because there's so few rows in the database. But what if you have hundreds of items in this relationship? If all you need to work with is this one relationship, then there's no need to waste resources retrieving, materializing, and tracking every single one of those to perform this simple operation. So filter, I will. And keep in mind, if this isn't a fresh DB context with an empty change tracker, you might see more artists than you expect in the results. Since I only have a single item in the artists property, and it's the one I want to remove, I can use the list removeAt method and point to the item at index 0. Alternatively, I could capture the specific object in a variable and use the remove method instead of removeAt, passing in that variable instead. And keep in mind that I'm not using an EFCore method here. This is only removing the item from the list of artists in the artists property method. So the change tracker does not yet know about this. And next, because it's really informative and useful when you're learning and debugging, I'll go ahead and call detect changes and grab the short debug view so we can take a look at that before calling save changes. As I'm running this now, just to be clear, there is only one artist in this collection, and it's Pablo. So I am 100% sure that this is the item I'll be removing from the list of artists. After I call detect changes, the debug view shows me details for 3 change tracker objects. The last 2 are expected. Those are the artist and the covers that I queried for, and those are unchanged. I'm not doing anything to either of those objects. My focus is on the join between them. And that's represented in this first item, which is for artist cover. And remember that the data model is aware of an entity called artist cover, even though we don't have that in our own code. And EFCore is tracking that entity in its knowledge of the relationship between the artist and the cover. And the entity is marked deleted. So by removing the artist from the cover, in response, EFCore knows that it needs to get rid of the join between them. Okay, so finally, I'll call save changes, and there's the resulting sequel, a delete command to get rid of that particular row in the join table, the one whose artists and cover IDs are both 1. So far, I've focused on deleting the relationship. But what if you want to delete one of the objects that's in the relationship? For example, you need to delete a cover, but it's been assigned to an artist. Many-to-many relationships also subscribe to cascade deletes by default. So if the full relationship is being tracked, in other words, you've got the cover and the artist in memory, and therefore EFCore is aware of the join between them, then EFCore will delete the join along with the cover. If you only have the cover in memory, so the change tracker isn't aware of the join, then EFCore will only send a delete for that cover to the database. But the database will then cascade delete the row in the join table for you. So with skip navigations, that's really the best path to disconnect two ends. I do have to say that it would be a lot simpler to just delete the row in the database directly instead of going through all this work. Now, granted, in your application, you may already have all those objects in memory, so you wouldn't have to go about explicitly getting them from the database. But if you don't have them in memory, especially in the case where you already know the IDs of both ends of the join, it's another reason to stick around for the module on using database views and stored procedures a little later in this course. What if you need to change a relationship? For example, reassigning a cover from one artist to another. You saw me do this with a one-to-many relationship, but there's a big difference here. When I moved a book, my data model was defined such that a book could only ever have one author. EF Core knew it had to change the author ID of the book. But with a many-to-many relationship, a cover can belong to multiple artists. So you have two separate joins you need to deal with. You need to remove the existing join and then add a new join between the cover and the other artist. This method, reassign a cover, takes a cover whose ID is 5 and is associated with the artist whose ID is 4. I'm going to disassociate them, removing the artist from that cover. Then I've retrieved the artist whose ID is 3, and now I'm adding that artist to the cover's artists collection. And we'll just check the change tracker this time instead of running it on the database. The first item showing in the debug view is an artist cover join entity to be added for the new combination of artist ID 3 and cover ID 5. And then the next is an artist cover entity that needs to be deleted. That was the original one. And of course, the artist and cover objects are all there, but they're unchanged. So if I were to call save changes, the row representing the original join will be deleted and the new one will be added. And in the end, the cover will now be reassigned to the new artist.